perspectives on NCERT's new Grade 8 Social Science textbook and its reception. I think this is a topic which is current and a topic on which our esteemed guests have been working on for quite some time and are here to discuss a lot of nuances about that topic. Just to give you a brief introduction to the topic, recently the NCERT published the new social science textbook for grade 8, part 1, titled Exploring Society, India and Beyond. The book has been widely discussed in the news and debated on TV channels. In this webinar, the speakers aim to highlight the salient features of grade 8 social science textbook and the rationale behind the changes in its content. The speaker will also attempt to clarify some of the hasty conclusions drawn by various popular commentators on the new NCERT textbooks. So today, initially we thought that Shri Probal Roy Chowdhury ji will also be able to join, but he has been unwell and he has kindly excused himself. So this session will be led by Shri Pramod Kumar. As you know, Shri Pramod Kumar, Professor Pramod Kumar is Amrita Darshanam International Center for Spiritual Studies, Amrita Vishwavidyalaya. He has been teaching Indian knowledge systems at Amrita University for over past 2 decades. He's been a senior consultant for the technical support group under NEP NCF implementation, member of NCERT's IKS curricular area group for textbook integration of Indian knowledge systems. We're going to have a presentation by Shri Pramod Kumar and followed by a Q&A from the members of the audience. Without much further ado, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Lakshmi Prasad ji. Once again, thanks to Voice of India and your team, including Shri Rajiv Malhotra ji, for giving us this opportunity to make this presentation about the grade 8 social science textbook of NCERT. So for the introduction, just to set the context, I would like our viewers to know the background of what has happened over the last 2 years. That is, the NCERT, under the supervision of a body called NSTC, which is the National Syllabus Textbook Material Committee, instituted certain subject-wise committees called Curricular Area Groups, CAGs, these were called, with the approval of the Ministry of Education, for the purpose of writing new textbooks which would be aligned with the National Education Policy 2020. We all know that in 2020, the Cabinet adopted the new National Education Policy, following which in 2023, August 2023, another document was released, which is called the National Curriculum Framework for School Education, NCFSC, which provided very clear guidelines for creating these new textbooks. So the role of these CAGs, the curricular area groups, was to create teams that would come up with a syllabus, syllabi for all these subjects, as well as write the textbook. So this process, this whole effort has been going on for more than 2 years now. And the Social Science Committee also. Earlier, it had produced textbooks for grade 3, grade 6, but it is very curious to see that this grade 8 textbook garnered a lot of media attention. And though even grade 3 and grade 6 had a lot of positive elements in it, and they were very different from the earlier textbooks which we saw produced by NCERT under the previous regimes. The positive inputs, especially the integration of Indian knowledge systems and the kind of paradigm shift that was brought into these textbooks with the integration of these Indian knowledge systems, was not given sufficient attention or weightage in some of these media coverages. But particularly, only the grade 8 social science textbook became a point of debate. And if you see the kind of TV debates that were conducted about these textbooks, which is the reason why, in fact, we wanted to do this presentation, is that the discourse, the general discourse surrounding the textbook has been very superficial. Many of these TV anchors or people who were representing various political parties, spokesmen of parties both on the left, on the right, or on the center, and intellectuals, etc., public historians who appeared on these TV debates, most of them don't seem to have even actually read the textbooks in full. And many of them made certain weird claims, inaccurate claims, factually inaccurate claims, and also distorted interpretations of what was given in the textbook. Most of the debate on the TV channel centered around just three characters, which is Babur, Akbar, and Aurangzeb. The rest of the textbook, in fact, did not get the attention it deserved at all. So the whole debate and the quarreling over the TV has been around what the textbook says about these three characters. So before we go into these disputes or the claims that have been made, in the next 20 minutes or so, I would like to our viewers to get a first-hand view of what the textbook says. Because as I said, in many of these TV debates, people have not even properly read or seen through the textbook. So I thought our viewers should have some first-hand information about what the textbook says. And in a short presentation like this, it will be very difficult to go through a very detailed coverage of the textbook. Wherever necessary, I will try to highlight important parts of the text. And at other places, I might go a little fast in the reading of the text. So hope that all of you will please bear with me. If at any point you're not clear about it, you can always stop me and ask me. So this is on page 43 in the PDF. So this is an integrated PDF which was given by the Social Science Curricular Area Group, where they put all the chapters together. So I'm referring only to the digital PDF number. The actual textbook print version number will vary from the page numbers that I am giving here, but that page number will also get displayed. You can see it. So there is a disclaimer that has been put out just before the chapter on the medieval period starts. So even this disclaimer, if you see what the disclaimer says, one particular point of the disclaimer has been much in debate. Right? So in the last paragraph, if you see, it says that while those happenings cannot be erased or denied, it would be wrong to hold anyone today responsible for them. Understanding the historical origin of cruel violence, abuse of misrule, or misplaced ambitions of power is the best way to heal the past and build a future where hopefully they will have no place. So this disclaimer, has been debated a lot on TV. And in fact, I found that some of the speakers on our side, even the so-called right wing, kind of saying that there was no need for putting this disclaimer, that this is very apologetic, that this comes across as very defensive, etc. And I would like to disagree with this point of view by pointing out that, see, we should keep in mind that these textbooks have been written for school children. And therefore, we have to keep child psychology in mind when we are dealing with parts of history which are violent like this, which are filled with a lot of violence against communities where there is religious violence involved. The textbooks are not written for satisfying TV anchors and spokespersons of political parties on the television debates. So this is something that we have to keep in mind. And also, see, this is a factually accurate statement that has been made, that we cannot blame somebody who's living today for what Babur or Akbar or Aurangzeb did. And as one perhaps very contrasting example that you can say is somebody like, say, Abdul Kalam, the former president and scientist and a missile man, who was genuinely patriotic, though even many people even criticize him for not having taken an open stand on issues like jihad, etc., which may be true. Nevertheless, you cannot hold Abdul Kalam, for example, responsible for what Aurangzeb did during the medieval era. So it's a factually correct, accurate statement that is being made, that if a modern day Muslim who is living in India is of this mindset where he has a genuinely, he has the sense of belonging to India, and he does not in any way say justify what Babur, Akbar, or Aurangzeb did, the blame cannot be put at his doorstep. That is what the disclaimer is saying. So I don't think more than this should be read into that disclaimer. And it is from the child's perspective, because it is for grade 8 that this has been put, and it is a factually accurate disclaimer, as I said. So then it goes to the medieval period. So the chapters in the medieval period starts. We will go to those portions, as I said, which have been particularly debated or highlighted in the media. So in this rise and fall of the Delhi Sultanate, I want our viewers to keep in mind that everything that we are going to show in these chapters, this Delhi Sultanate, on Babur, Akbar, Aurangzeb, on the British colonial era, on the rise of Marathas, and whatever has been covered in this textbook, is very, very path breaking, because you will not see this covered in this way in any of the previous NCERT textbooks. So this is something that we have to appreciate. So till this grade 8 textbook came out, in fact, many of my friends and colleagues, etc., used to come up with this frequently kind of heard criticism that it has been 10 years since the Modi government has been in power, but it has been very slow in changing these textbooks, etc. But once this particular textbook has come, that whole criticism seems to have been kind of muted now. So at least we must appreciate that very slow and systematic work is going on, and we are now seeing the clear positive results of that effort which has been going on for the last 2 years. And we have to keep in mind that earlier such efforts were derailed because of unwanted controversies, excessive exaggerations which were there in the textbooks. So we have to appreciate that this particular team and the experts involved in these new textbooks have taken more care to ensure that such errors or exaggerations were avoided. And we will see that everything that has been said in this textbook can be supported. There is supporting evidence available through primary historical sources, uh, especially, for example, on the question of jizya, we will see the available evidence that is there. So the textbook says the Sultanate period was marked by political instability combined with efforts at territorial expansion. This resulted in military campaigns that raided villages and cities and plundered. Just I remove the pan. Okay, maybe hold up. Just give me a second. Sorry. I'm trying to hide the stop panel, which is kind of covering the textbook.
So we can only see a small portion of the uh, page
Okay,
there
okay.
that you wanted to show. Yeah.
Okay. You're not seeing the full screen part, is it?
The last line that I can read is since the past continues to live with us, and that's
Okay.
where it ends. Yeah.
Now, is it in the full screen mode or still?
No, it's still not in the full screen mode. You would try F5 or something like that.
Okay. Let me just check. The file doesn't work that way. Okay. Is this better? If I
Yeah, you can
actually
scroll. Yeah, now the screen has changed.
now
I
it is
can see
okay.
a time scale from 1200 to yeah.
Okay, so I'll
There's
use this
yeah
instead of the full screen. I think this is
yeah.
better.
This is better. This is better. Yeah, sure.
So we were looking at the chapter on the Delhi Sultanate. One second. And destroyed temples and seats of learning. Successions, the appointments of new sultans were often violent. Almost two sultans out of three seized power by eliminating their predecessor, so that the sultan's average reign was hardly more than 9 years. So you see, very factual statements have been made about the kind of violence that involved, the kind of conspiracies that involved in the changing of the sultans. None of this you would find in the previous textbooks, which would largely glorify only the governance or their administration or the tax reforms or the land tax reforms that these rulers would bring. But all these details, nuances would have been left out in the previous text. At the turn of the 14th century, then it talks about Alauddin Khilji. He conducted military campaigns over large areas of north and central India, sacking and plundering many cities. At the same time, he also repelled several invasions by Mongol forces who were trying to add India to the vast Mongol Empire. It covered most of Asia at that time. His slave general Malik Kafur expanded the Sultanate's reach southward, conquering several kingdoms on the way. Their plundered wealth helped finance the Sultanate's enormous military apparatus. He also attacked a number of Hindu centers such as Srirangam, Madurai, Chidambaram, and possibly. So this is as good mention of Alauddin Khilji's exploits as you can get, given the time and the space constraints in a textbook like this has. So they have not left even the expansion into South India also. So often this complaint would be heard that these textbooks are Delhi centric, that other regions in India are not represented. So even while talking about the sultanates, they have made sure that the kind of sufferings that the people in Srirangam, for example, or in other parts of South India faced because of Malik Kafur's invasions into the south have been covered in the textbook. We all know that the Srirangam temple was almost for 50 years. It was devoid of proper worship because of this very brutal kind of sacking of the temple that Malik Kafur has. At least this has been mentioned in the textbook. Then, talking about Tughlaq, the textbook says the people were forced to travel over 1,000 kilometers, and a few years later, as his plan misfired, he shifted the capital back to Delhi. Both transfers resulted in great loss of life, according to some sources. Another instance was the introduction of token currency, etc. So, none of the negative details have been left out. Right? They're not defensive at all, as some critics have said. Very factually, they have portrayed the damage done by the eccentric, policies of some of these rulers. The sultans and their court elite lived in luxurious palaces, enjoying elaborate clothing, jeweled ornaments, and fine food. This wealth was largely derived from plunder from their military campaigns, taxes levied on the common people, and conquered regions, and engagement in slave trade. This is very important to note that they highlight that they indulged in slave trade. Later on in the chapter on Shivaji, you will see that they have also highlighted that Shivaji abolished this slave trade that these foreign rulers were indulging in. So this contrast has been very nicely brought up. This period also witnessed numerous attacks on sacred or revered images in Buddhist, Jain, Hindu temples, such as destruction was motivated not just by plunder but also by iconoclasm. Again, a very important point to note, because this is what leftist historians like Romila Thapar used to whitewash in their books as well as in the textbooks. They would often say that much of this, the destruction of the temples was just politically motivated campaigns. These were just political military campaigns that led to the destruction, and that there was no religious motive in it. Or they would say that it was because these temples had a lot of wealth, that this wealth attracted these foreign invaders. But they would always try to whitewash this the religious angle to the destruction of the temples that was there. So very clearly, for the first time, you see that the iconoclasm of these rulers is being covered. Not only that, you see, they're putting out a very nice clarification here, which says that we have used the term image instead of the term idol. This is because we all know that these foreign invaders, like, for example, Ghazni, Muhammad Ghaznavi, used to be called Chicken, destroyer of idols, breaker of idols. So, idolatry, as we know, was one of the key motivations for some of these invaders to come and invade places like Somnath. Right. So, even that, this nuance has been taken care of. That the textbook does not refer to, these vigrahas, murtis. They are using these Sanskrit words image, murti, vigraha, pratima, instead of that word idol, which has a very negative connotation. So this is extraordinary. I found this particular passage drew my attention when I was reading. Now we come to that part which has been the most debated on TV channels, which is the jizya. Right? So some of the sultans also imposed jizya, a tax on non-Muslim subjects to grant them protection and exemption from military service. In practice, depending on the ruler, this discriminatory tax would be a source of economic burden and public humiliation, and formed a financial and social incentive for subjects to convert to Islam. So this is what has been kind of widely debated on the TV channels. And one particular spokesperson of the left, who seems to have been invited to almost every channel, and she seems to be the sole spokesperson today for the left side of the historians. This is Dr. Ruchika Sharma, who is supposed to be a PhD from JMU. And in many of these TV debates, she has claimed that there is no primary source which shows that jizya was had any kind of religious motivation to it. That jizya was not imposed at all for the sake of forcing, imposing any kind of psychological pressure on the subjects to convert to Islam. But it was purely to avoid enlisting in the military that this jizya was, imposed. That those who did not want to go into the military, enlist in the military, only such people would be asked to pay the jizya. And this is factually incorrect, as we shall see. Once covering the rest of the highlights in the textbook, I will show you some of the primary sources on this jizya as to what is said in these medieval texts as to the purpose of jizya itself. And then it goes to Taimur's accounts, where he says, as he wrote in his memoirs, his twofold objective was to wage war with the infidels and to gain something by plundering the wealth of the infidels. Large numbers were killed or enslaved, and the city was left in ruins. Taimur soon withdrew from India with huge plunder, leaving chaos. So this religious iconoclasm part has been very clearly brought out, as you can see. Then it goes to, it mentions the Rajput resistance. And here, in fact, I have given this feedback that the Rajput resistance to the Mughals, particularly Rana Kumbha, Rana Sanga, Maharana Pratap, etc., could have been covered in more detail, possibly because of space constraints. They have not been able to perhaps give a separate chapter, but we will hope in the future. This is one of the criticisms that has come from some of the speakers on the right, that the resistance, the Rajput resistance, has not been given as much weight as should have been given. But this is, I think, purely due to space constraints and nothing to do with any kind of bias, say, against them, right? So at least we have to be, appreciate that some of these, in fact, speakers on the TV debates, etc., claim that Rana Kumbha, Rana Sangha, etc., have not been mentioned at all in the textbooks. Therefore, I have highlighted these passages where Rana Kumbha, Rana Sangha, etc., have been mentioned in the textbook. So it is not true to say that the Rajput resistance has not been covered at all. Very much it has been clearly mentioned in the textbooks. And another very important point which you will see missing is that the previous NCERT textbooks would not highlight at all the glory of the Vijayanagara Empire. They would simply gloss over the Vijayanagara Empire in a paragraph or two, right? But in this time, a lot of space has been provided to the importance of the Vijayanagara Empire. And the resistance it gave to these sultanates in the south, the Bahmani Sultanate, etc., as well as to Krishnadevaraya and to the downfall of Vijayanagara. So all this has been covered, elaborately here, and also foreign, travelers' accounts of the glory of Vijayanagara. So in this passage, you can see Domingo Pay's description of Vijayanagara. This city seemed to me as large as Rome, very beautiful to sight. There are many groves, etc. So there's a very famous account of Domingo Pay's of Vijayanagara. So all these, very important details which you see covered in this grade 8 textbook, as I said, this is all new. This is all path-breaking stuff. You will not see this kind of weightage given to this in the previous. So now we come to the other disputed part, or what has been debated, heavily in the TV channels, is on Babur. So clearly, Babur's brutal side has been brought out in this passage, where they say, but he was also a brutal and ruthless conqueror, slaughtering entire populations of cities and enslaving men, women, and children, and taking pride in erecting towers of skulls made from the slaughtered people of plundered cities. So whether it is Babur or Akbar, you will see that earlier, even Akbar's invasion of Chittor would never be covered in these textbooks. We have seen many popular depictions also, like this movie called Yoda Akbar, where nothing of Akbar's invasion of Chittorgarh would be mentioned. So the textbook, for the first time, in fact, brings out the brutality of Akbar in his earlier days. So there's a mention of Hemu also, and how he is injured in the battlefield, and then it leads to the rise of these Mughals, etc. So then it talks about Akbar's again religious angle of Akbar. Akbar set out to bring the entire subcontinent under Mughal control. His reign was a blend of brutality and tolerance shaped by ambition and strategy. In early conquests, following many of his predecessors' examples, he showed no mercy at the fort of Chittor or Chittorgarh in Rajasthan, which he besieged for more than 5 months in the face of determined resistance from the Rajput soldiers. They inflicted heavy losses on the Mughal army, but the fort finally breached, died fighting in large numbers, while hundreds of women committed Jauhar. Akbar ordered the massacre of 30,000 civilians, and the surviving women and children were enslaved. Akbar was 25 at the time, and he sent a message of victory which read, "We have succeeded in occupying a number of forts and towns belonging to the infidels and have established Islam there. With the help of our bloodthirsty sword, we have erased the signs of infidelity from their minds and have destroyed temples in those places and all over Hindustan." So, very clearly, the early life of Akbar, that he was not as tolerant as it was made out to be, which he does become in his, he mellows down in his later years with his Dini Ilahi and the kind of syncretic religion that he tries to create. And he also, in fact, goes into the bad books of his own, clerics, etc., because of doing that. Though that has been mentioned, but this earlier side has not been passed over as the earlier previous NCRT textbook would do. So there is a note on Jauhar also, which they have mentioned. And they also mentioned that Akbar had abolished the jizya. So this is again something that Ruchika Sharma says, that Akbar actually abolished the jizya, and therefore the textbook is wrong in saying that jizya was used for religious conversion, etc. So we will see, as I said, some of the primary sources covering jizya once we finish some of these highlights in the textbook. So then Jahangir and Shah Jahan. So the Mughal rulers have been mentioned, but their dark side has also been portrayed. So Aurangzeb, again very clearly how he killed his own brothers and rose to power, right? And what he would do to maintain his large armies. I'm just going a little fast here so that I'll spend more time on the important parts of the text. So again, Aurangzeb's reimposition of the jizya has been mentioned on non-Muslims, as well as a pilgrimage tax on Hindus traveling to their sacred places, both of which had been abolished by Akbar. So this has been clearly mentioned that Aurangzeb, reimposed the jizya, and again, see very clearly they have challenged this leftist narrative, right? That it was purely political. Some scholars argue that Aurangzeb's motives were primarily political, that is to establish and strengthen his empire's dominance. They also give examples of grants and assurances of protection he gave to some temples. While politics did play a part in his decisions, Aurangzeb's own farmans make his personal religious motive clear. In 1669, for example, he ordered governors of all provinces to demolish schools and temples of the infidels and put down their teachings and religious temples at Banaras, present-day Varanasi, Mathura, Somnath, among many others, were destroyed, as well as Jain temples and Sikh gurudwaras. This aspect of Aurangzeb was also visible in his persecution of Muslims of other sects, including Sufis and Zoroastrians, the religion of the Parsis in India, originally from Persia. So very clearly, the religious motives of Aurangzeb have been very clearly brought out in the text, and they have not lost over it like the leftists used to do by calling it merely as political ambition. So there is a paragraph to show also that towards the end, Aurangzeb felt frustrated as his empire was crumbling right in front of his eyes because of the rise of the Marathas. Then again, the disclaimer has been repeated here and on this section of Aurangzeb. See, we have to keep in mind that if this disclaimer had not been put, even with this disclaimer, the kind of criticism or the way the leftists have tried to pounce on these new textbooks is very clear. So imagine if this disclaimer had not been put, then they would have put all kinds of motives. They would have imputed motives against the textbook writers, and therefore the disclaimer is important, as I said at the beginning. So Rani Durgavati has been highlighted, right? Many of these, as I said, the resistance in the earlier NCERT textbooks, it would always be like we were always a defeated race, we were always divided and fighting amongst ourselves, and we did not give sufficient resistance to the foreign invaders. So very clearly, you can see that this particular textbook, the new textbook, highlights, the united resistance and all the resistance movements that came up against these foreign invaders. So Rana Sangha is being mentioned here, as I said. Rana Kumbha was mentioned earlier. So anybody who says that they have not been mentioned in the textbook is actually inaccurate. Maharana Pratap has been mentioned; his role has been covered, right? Though, as I said, I would have, personally liked that this could have been expanded into a these resistance movements could have been, expanded into a larger, perhaps, chapter, but because of space constraints, at least they have ensured that they have been, clearly mentioned, and their role has been mentioned. Homes have been mentioned, and there is remember that there is a grade 8 part 2 textbook that is likely to be published in the next few months. So the textbook committee, in fact, has put out very clear clarifications that some of the things which have not been covered in the part one they are planning to cover them in the part two. So this whole Aurangzeb part goes on, right? And then the rise of the Marathas is covered in the next chapter, and the persecution of the Sikhs under Aurangzeb has been covered and clearly mentioned, right? Guru Gobind Singh, Guru Tegh Bahadur, all these the atrocities that they were committed, the brutal way in which some of them were tortured and given a choice either to convert to Islam or to face the sword. All this has been very clearly covered in the textbook. there is an important point here. You see, also that even when Akbar had mellowed down, the textbook is making a mention that despite Akbar's growing tolerance for different faiths, non-Muslims were kept in a minority in the higher echelons of the administration. For instance, the total percentage of non-Muslim officials in his administration rarely exceeded one third of the total and was often much less. Even among Muslim officials, those of foreign origin were generally favored over those of Indian origin. Their preference for Persian, etc. All this has been very clearly highlighted. Even Akbar, when he had mellowed down in his later times, right, the representation of non-Muslims in his administration was very low. So this is the positive side of the economic role of temples, right? So these are things which have not been highlighted in these TV debates, as I was saying. There are many other aspects of the textbook also which we need to take note of. A lot of positive inputs are there which need to be highlighted. And this whole debate which has happened in the public space has been, as I said, confined just to these three characters, Babur, Akbar, and Aurangzeb, which is not fair at all, does not do justice to actually what the textbook is trying to communicate to the children. So there is a whole chapter on the rise of the Marathas which you are seeing on screen, and Shivaji has been given sufficient weightage. Unlike in the previous textbooks, there is a whole chapter on the Marathas and Shivaji, and the whole depiction of Shivaji is excellent in this part of the textbook, right? From his strategies, from his military campaigns, his leadership qualities, right? His abolition of slavery, the way he treated his subjects, the way he treated the non-Hindu subjects, all the beautiful sides of Shivaji's rule and his character and his personality has been mentioned. His encounter with Afzal Khan, the surgical strike on Shaista Khan in Pune, the Wagnak which he used for killing Afzal Khan. So all this has been very beautifully covered in the textbook. And there was this mention, Rajdeep Sardesai, in fact, on India Today in the debate, made a factually incorrect claim that Shivaji plundered Bengal. Actually, Shivaji never goes to Bengal, and the textbook very clearly mentions that after Shivaji, the other Marathas and the Peshwas, etc., when this rule comes up, sometimes you would see that these regiments which would be sent to sack or to teach a lesson to some of the territories which were under the control of these foreign invaders. Some of these units would resort to wanton looting, plundering, etc., and this would be treated as indiscipline. And therefore, Bengal did suffer under some of these Maratha campaigns. That has been factually mentioned. But Rajdeep Sardesai makes serious error when he says that it was Shivaji who plundered Bengal. Right? So his escape from Agra has been highlighted, has been mentioned here. His Rajyabhisheka has been highlighted, right? And the reforms that he brought about, the navy that the strategic thinking of Shivaji, of how he built the navy, etc. Right, and how therefore the Marathas became instrumental in subduing the Mughals, and also that when the British in fact took control, it was from the Marathas that they took control. It was not from the Mughals that they took control. This part also has been very clearly highlighted in the textbook. So the kind of pan-India influence and power, the kind of dominance that the Marathas had, has been very clearly highlighted in this chapter. So you see, the Marathas brought large parts of India under their control and generally ruled them well. But with the regional chiefs acquiring more power and autonomy, this also resulted in occasional indiscipline and abuse in stark contrast with Shivaji's values. For instance, the Marathas' 10-year campaign in Bengal inflicted much cruelty and devastation on the government. So, we have to appreciate the objectivity of the team that has written the textbook. Wherever, even if there is a negative side, even they have to mention this negative side of the campaign in Bengal. They have not flinched from doing that. Very accurately, factually, they have mentioned it, but they have also clarified that it is only during the later time because of this indiscipline and that it went against Shivaji Maharaj's values and the instructions that he would give. That in such campaigns, the common people should not be subjected to any kind of discrimination or abuse, etc. So after this rise of the Marathas, then we go to the British colonial part. There is a mention of this tax levied by the Marathas, which is called Chowdhury, right? And it is also mentioned that this tax was used as a protection money. That is, these territories would then come under the protection of the Marathas, and they would ensure that the Mughal and the marauding armies would not trouble them. So the purpose of the tax was also very clearly mentioned there. So from here, the rise of the Maratha Navy, Kanoji Angre has also been mentioned. How the Maratha ships would attack the English ships, and the cultural revival that Shivaji brought about. Right, this also has been highlighted. His saffron flag was adopted by all the Marathas. Right, he contributed most to the revival of ancient Indian culture and values by giving people a demonstration that mighty kingdoms and empires could be defeated, and that Marathas would maintain, expand, and administer an empire of their own, and that he gave importance to promoting the Marathi language, and he gave Sanskrit equivalents for prevalent Persian words in his administration, etc. So very, beautifully, all these important details of the Maratha rule have been covered. Some of the women rulers of the Marathas have also been highlighted, particularly Arabai and Punyashloki, Ahilyabai Holkar, as she is called, and the kind of contributions that she made in the restoration of Kashi Vishwanath temple has also been highlighted here in this chart. And then Sarfoji is coming to Tanjore, right? And the kind of renaissance that Sarfoji's rule saw in the Tanjore Marathas rule, right? Especially the setting up of what is called the Saraswati Mahal Library and the Dhanvantari Mahal, etc. So their intellectual contributions also have been highlighted in the textbook. Right? This is a very beautiful part because it was truly a time of cultural, protection or preservation of our Indian knowledge systems by Sarfoji in Tanjore. You would have noticed that recently the Tamil Nadu government has in fact declared this Saraswati Mahal as a place of great historical cultural importance. So that legacy continues. So that also has been covered in this. So after this Marathas chapter, then we go to the colonial era. In the British era, just a few highlights, and then we'll go to the discussion on the jizya, as I said. Uh, you know, Along with this economic looting, some very interesting facts that have been mentioned. Right, the position that India had. Right, Angus Madison's research has been mentioned in the textbook. This is completely new. You will not see that any of the earlier NCERT textbooks covered this. Angus Madison's research from 2001, where in his work, the world economy, a millennial perspective, he has pointed out that India had a very dominant role in the world economy, that it contributed a significant percentage to the world GDP, at least about one-fourth of the world GDP. So all these important statistics have been updated statistics have been covered in the textbook to show the reason for why these colonialists were attracted to India. That because India was, playing such a remarkable, having such a position of dominance, and because of our economic prosperity, which attracted the eyes of these ambitious colonial rulers, has been highlighted. So Abaka's, tiff with the Portuguese has also been highlighted here. How she resisted the Portuguese. Vasco da Gama's bombing of Calicut has been mentioned. So earlier textbooks would simply gloss over Vasco da Gama by calling him an explorer, etc. But here they have highlighted, Vasco da Gama's cruel kind of, attacks on Calicut. And the Goan Inquisition has been mentioned. This is also new. I don't think any of the earlier textbooks talked about the Inquisition in Goa and how they persecuted Hindus and others. In through this Inquisition has also been covered here. Even in the case of the French, this passage, particularly which drew my attention, is about the French in Pondicherry. Even in the case of the French, many people usually say that the French were far better off compared to the British and the Portuguese or the Goan this Inquisition which was there, which is actually true that the French were not as brutal or as fanatic in their imposition of Christianity as the others were. But even there, you see that textbook very nicely highlights an exception that occurred in Pondicherry, which was the destruction of the Vedapurishwara temple, where the governor, this duplex, orders a systematic dismantling of the temple because of the pressure from his wife, who was a Christian fanatic, and both of them supervised this, destruction of this temple, the Vedapurishwara temple, as it has been called. So it is really amazing that despite their space constraints, even when they are covering the French, they have managed to cover such important details in the textbook. This is something that all of us should appreciate. Otherwise, as I said, the previous writers had completely glossed over these details, and a very incomplete or biased picture of the colonial rule would be presented to these people. So these are some of the important highlights from the textbook which I wanted to present to you. So these are the most important chapters of the book. If you want to read it, the whole textbook is there on the NCERT's website. You can go and download it and go through, verify. The reason why I was showing you the textbook is, as I said, that you should see it firsthand and see what has been highlighted here, the important details which have been covered here. See, the massive, terrible famines which occurred during the British rule have also been highlighted in the textbook, and the kind of loss of human life and the blow that it gave to our agrarian economy has also been very nicely covered, elaborately covered in the textbook. Right. So all this, nothing has been left off. You cannot blame them at all for having, say, left off any important detail of the colonial exploitation of India. Very important works have been covered. Dadabhai Nauroji's Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, Ramesh Chandra's Economic History of India. So, the best of references have been given to the students. The primary sources have been mentioned for them, where they can look at. This latest research by Utsa Patnaik has also been covered. Utsa Patnaik, as wrote a book where she made an estimate of the total wealth that has been drained from India during the British rule, and she gives this figure called 45 trillion US dollars. And it says that in today's value, this would be about 13 times Britain's GDP in 2023. So, very clearly the students are being told that imagine, if this wealth had not been looted out of India by the British, where would we be today? So this was extracted not just through taxes, but by charging Indians for the colonial powers expenditures on building railways, telegraph network, and even on wars. Had this wealth remained invested in India, it would have been a very different country when it attained independence. And not only this, see, they're very clearly mentioning the previous writers. You ask any average Indian today, was British rule good or bad for us? Most of the school students will say, but the British gave us railways, but the British gave us the modern education system. Right? So the textbook is not, leaving out even this detail that even the building of the railways was a colonial project, and it was, in fact, cost us heavily, the kind of economic damage that it did to us. And this was done purely for the strategic advantage for the British, which was to transport rice grains, food, raw materials from the deep interior villages in India to port cities like Bombay, etc., from where it would be loaded onto ships and taken away to Britain. And we know that during the Second World War alone, again, there was such a terrible famine created because of Churchill's, exploitative policies, where he snatched away this entire agricultural produce from India to feed these English armies which were fighting against Britain. And we all know that this racist side that was there to Churchill, where he would say that this food is more important for the British soldiers than it is necessary for the Indians. And this is how he justified, these famines that occurred, killing millions of people during the Second World War. With this, I'll take you to the other PPT which I wanted to share about, particularly about some primary sources which give supporting evidences, particularly on the debate about jizya. Right? So I was telling you that this. Are you able to see this PPT, Lakshmi, instead of the PDF now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. So I was saying that this speaker called Dr. Ritika Sharma, she has appeared on almost every TV channel claiming that jizya has no religious basis, in the sense that it was never used as a pressure tactic to encourage religious conversions of Hindus. Right. So here is a primary source, which is the original source, which is the Quranic source. So 929 of the Quran says, "Fight those who do not believe in Allah or in the last day, and who do not consider unlawful what Allah and His Messenger have made unlawful, and who do not adopt the religion of truth from those who were given the scripture. Fight until they give the jizya willingly, while they are humbled." See, what more evidence do you need? Right? This is the source text of Islam, which is clearly saying that jizya is to be imposed for humbling, right, the infidels, the non-Muslims, into submission to Islam. So, this lady has been so confidently going to every TV channel and claiming that the textbook writers don't know history, and that jizya was only for those who did not want to enlist in the army, etc. And she was challenging, in fact, and it is really sad that none of the people who were responding to her were able to bring out some of these sources in those TV debates and counter her, right, when she was so overconfidently speaking that there is no justification for saying that jizya has been used for conversion. Right, I could not see even one speaker from her side who quoted, say, the Quran or other medieval sources which clearly mentioned that jizya was used as a pressure tactic to insult the non-Muslims and to create a kind of psychological pressure on them to convert to Islam. So this is from another such source, which is these letters of Ahmad Sarhindi, called Maktubati Imam Rabbani, right? So in this letter number 163, very clearly he's talking about the role of jizya. The honor of Islam lies in insulting kufr and kafirs. So, insulting kufr and kafirs, that has to be highlighted. So this is what it says. One who respects the kafirs dishonors the Muslims. The real purpose of levying jizya on them is to humiliate them to such an extent that they may not be able to dress well and to live in grandeur. They should constantly remain terrified and trembling. It is indeed intended to hold them under contempt and to uphold the honor and might of Islam. So, what more references, what more evidence do you need to show that jizya had this purpose of actually causing humiliation and to be used as a tactic to force people to convert to Islam? This is a paper that I extracted. I'm quoting from the internet, where Firoz Shah's autobiography is being quoted, where in his own autobiography, Firoz Shah is also, in his own words, he is explaining the role of jizya, where he says, "I encouraged my infidel subjects to embrace the religion of the Prophet, and I proclaimed that excuse everyone who repeated the creed and became a Muslim should be exempt from the jizya or poll tax imposed on non-believers." When this information came to the ears of the people at large, great numbers of Hindus presented themselves and were admitted to the honor of Islam. Thus, they came forward day by day from every quarter, and adopting the faith were exonerated from the jizya and were favored with presents and distinction. So very clearly, jizya was used for religious conversion. It was not meant for simply avoiding duties in the army. There is another source. This was highlighted by a coach, an IAS coach called Nikhil on YouTube. I went to this original source and I got it. This is a Venetian traveler called Niccolo Manucci, and in his accounts, he is mentioning clearly that to force the Hindus to become Mohammedans, many who were unable to pay turned Mohammedans to obtain relief from the insults of the collectors. Very clearly, he is saying that the collectors would insult these Hindus and force them to pay this jizya, and the insults were part of the humiliation to the poll tax of this jizya to force them to convert to Islam. So at least four sources we have seen here to show the real intention and the purpose of jizya. See, I mentioned this coach, civil services IAS teacher, as well as true Indology. It is very nice to see that on the social media, some of these common citizens have come forth in defending, in fact, these textbooks, and have done it very nicely by going to the primary sources. So, True Indology, in fact, took up this particular claim of Dr. Ruchika Sharma, where she claims that Shivaji Maharaj looted Srirangapatnam, and therefore, he has refuted the claim by going to the original sources, Ruchika Sharma claims that in the Bakars, so this Bakar is a chronicle in Marathi, right? So there is a very important text which is called the Sabhasad Bakar. So in fact, this is the Sabhasad Bakar, which I'm showing on screen. This is written by a person called Krishnaji Ananta Sabhasad. So this is why it is called as the Sabhasad Bakar. So these are the chronicles of Shivaji. In fact, many of his deeds are highlighted there. So Ruchika Sharma was claiming that this Sabhasad Bakar mentions about Shivaji's raids on Srirangapatnam, etc. True Indology, has refuted the claim that saying that nowhere in the Sabhasad Bakar you will find a reference to Shivaji's raids of Srirangapatnam, etc., that this is completely fabricated, that you will find it only in British sources. So, in a particular, text, a British text, you find that the text says it is believed that he has robbed Srirangapatnam. So, there was no evidence actually provided. It was just kind of a letter that was written of the East India Company colonizers, where they're saying that it is believed that he has robbed Srirangapatnam. So very nicely, True Indology has highlighted this, and he has contrasted with the original backers, where specifically Shivaji orders that the common people should not be in any way kind of put to trouble during these raids, etc. Right. So some of these claims made by Ruchika Sharma have already been, in fact, very clearly disproved by some of these people like True Indology and others on the social media. Another claim that she makes, Dr. Ruchika Sharma, the last claim that she makes, is that even during Aurangzeb's period, that the Brahmins were exempted from paying jizya. So I was looking up this, and I found that again this is a false claim, right? That earlier rulers, some of them did exempt Brahmins from jizya, but very clearly this practice changes, particularly from Firoz Shah's time. We just read out, in fact, Firoz Shah's autobiography, where he is emphasizing on the role of the jizya in encouraging the Hindus to convert to Islam. And in fact, it is Firoz Shah Tughlaq who particularly imposes jizya on the Brahmins. And you will find that there is no clear evidence anywhere which can show that Aurangzeb had actually exempted Brahmins from jizya. There is absolutely no source to claim, as Ruchika Sharma says, that Aurangzeb had exempted them. This is all just hearsay claims that have been made. It is only pre-Firoz Shah Tughlaq's period that this exemption was provided. With Firoz Shah, that exemption goes away. And in fact, Richard Eaton, this historian, very clearly says that he has extensively analyzed primary sources from Aurangzeb's reign, and he found no credible evidence supporting systematic exemptions to Brahmins from jizya. So this is again a false claim that this Ruchika Sharma has made. So with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. My conclusion is, as I said, please look at the textbook in its entirety. Right? Don't simply be fixated, as the media has been only with Babur, Akbar, etc. And please look at all the other positive aspects which are being covered in the textbook. And we should keep in mind that we all have a role to play, especially in this age of social media, etc. That we should also be active in countering, some of these distortions, wrong claims that people like Ruchika Sharma have been putting. So thank you once again for giving me this time for presentation, and thank you to all our viewers for listening to me patiently. We can take some questions. So I'm just going
Thanks,
to.
Pramodji. You may unshare the document now. Um, that's a very comprehensive coverage of the class 8 textbook. In fact, I'm wondering, while you're taking us through this, that so much is crammed into one class that, all
Right.
that we have, people like us have struggled to learn after leaving school from secondary sources, or, from our own self-research, has now been covered in the school textbook, which is a very commendable effort. And I mean, it covers a huge timeline and a lot of distortionary narratives, which we only learned from, sources like True Indology have been that are false, are included now, which is really commendable. Um, You mentioned Richard Eaton, but the Richard Eaton is also the same guy who is the grandfather of
Correct.
Hindu desecration of temples and the desecration of temples for political purposes, and he's the often repeated professor by all the left historians.
Right, right.
Um,
So even such a person as Richard Eaton is very clearly saying that there was no exemption given to the Brahmins. So in fact, what he's saying is in favor of the textbook. This is what I was trying
in
to
the favor of
understand.
the rare occasion where Richard Eaton is favoring the
Correct.
textbook. um, I mean, the talk is very clear and self-evident. So we have a few questions on the chat. Arpita ji is saying that Darashiko is also a character lionized, but what are the actual facts? I'm not sure if that's been covered in this particular edition of the textbook.
There is a brief mention has been made, but not very elaborate. About his love of the Upanishads and all that. A little has been covered there. See,
Okay.
one thing we have to keep in mind is that one of the important policies of the NEP has been to reduce the content of the textbooks. So this has been a complaint for many decades now that we overburden our children with too much of information, and there's too much of rote learning and bombardment of information that is being done in the textbooks. So, in fact, the NEP constantly has told these textbook writers to cut down on unnecessary content wherever possible, right? So that is the reason why, in fact, earlier there used to be four different parts of these textbooks: one for geography, one for history, one for civics, one for economics. All this has been combined and put together into a single social sciences textbook. So as it is, a lot of content has been reduced. So even then, that is why I was saying that we have to appreciate that within this constraint that we have, so many important details have been highlighted and covered.
It does. It does certainly. Um, uh, and from my memory of my own school time, where I studied in the state syllabus of Andhra Pradesh, combined Andhra Pradesh, and a lot of these path-breaking developments that you're mentioning were already covered in certain state syllabuses back then. Because for us, Aurangzeb has always been a tyrant. Khilji has always been an invader. Tughlaq has always been a madman. So these things which are very intuitive and taught to us at a very early age, the facts. I'm surprised that they're not in the national the national level syllabus, and it took so long for us to actually correct them. So it's actually a good step. We have another
No, some
question.
of these
Not a
details
so,
were there, but what would happen is this would get kind of sidelined by the excessive kind of weightage that was given to particularly the Mughal rulers and the Delhi Sultanate, etc. The glorification that they indulged in, the whitewashing which they indulged in, would take away the focus from the real facts. That is where this textbook has kind of very nicely balanced. The dark side of their period also has been brought up.
agree. There's a comment that the left historians who distorted history for so long have not been made accountable for their misdeeds. That's a tragedy, but I think they'll suffer their ignominy and probably they'll
History
lose their
will be their
relevance. And
judge. Right.
yeah, Kamlesh ji has a question. You're on mute, ma'am.
First question is that the name of the book is Exploring Indian Society, right?
Yes. Yes.
Is that the book?
Yes.
Okay. Grade 8. And the thrust is on the rulers and where is the society? Actually, it is the history is, if it is history, it is a history of people and how the rulers change their lifestyle or what happened.
Okay.
So, and secondly, it starts with the Hiljis and Lodhis and whatnot. History of India is history of India. So you start with the Indian people who were defeated by the, so you can say invaders and influx. That is the proper introduction to the medieval part, right? And the second thing is, it is, I have taught history, I mean, for 25 years and wrote from 15,000 BC to 1000 AD, history of ancient India, all evidence based in 2010. It did not I don't know how I can show it to get the proper image. Where is this? Right. Yeah. Anyway, it is Sterling Publishers. So it is all evidence-based and lengthy bibliography. And before writing that, I asked in the first decade of the 21st century, international scholars, if you have any help that you want to give me, and nobody answered. But once the book was written, this entire team, what is the name of that team? Indian Historical Society or something? Something like that.
Indian
ICHR?
History Congress, perhaps you're referring.
Yeah,
ICHR.
whatever. I'm forgetting, getting old. So that particular society criticized for some minor, spelling mistakes. And one of them, I mean, these are all aspirants of some kind of Padabhushans and Vibhushans and God knows what grants. One of them said that we disagree with your dating of the Mahabharata, and therefore, in good conscience, we cannot recommend it. I don't understand how they are thinking. Now, 15 years later, they have produced this scrap. Think of it. Why should we be starting with the Muslims? What was India at that time in 1000?
Let me respond to that, ma'am. That is why at the beginning of the textbook, beginning of the presentation, I mentioned that you have to look at the earlier textbooks for grade 3, grade 6, and grade 5, other textbooks which are coming up, where what you are saying about exploring Indian society has been very thoroughly covered. So what we are looking at here is only one part of the grade 8 textbook, and because the Delhi Sultanate and the rise of the Marathas in this period is covered here, so therefore you find a focus on this. It does not mean that they have focused only on this and that the real history of the people of India has been left out. So I would very much request you to please go to the NCERT website, download the grade 3, grade 6 textbooks also. Look at how the earlier periods have been covered, and you will find, as I said, that it is a very positive change that has been made from the earlier textbooks. So,
Yeah, but this
it
particular,
lives up to that title. Now, as far as see the dating of the Mahabharata is concerned, see it is still it's a very complex debate that still goes on. Many of the dating methodologies that are used are still debated in scholarly circles, etc. We don't have, say, a fixed date that has been arrived at by consensus for the Mahabharata. So there are some scholars who have tried to date it on the basis of astronomical mentions in the Mahabharata, etc. You see, all these attempts will not be sufficient as long as we don't have sufficient amount of archaeological evidence of the Mahabharata period, which can be dated and which can give us a range at least of the date. So, any other methods that use only astronomy or only textual evidence to date it, right? So, this is the problem. What will happen is that it will not be sufficient or adequate evidence. It will always be disputed. So in such cases, our side also we have to keep in mind that instead of taking a rigid ideological position on certain things, right, we have to keep our minds open to new conclusions also based on the data that we have, based on the evidence that we have, and we should be willing to even revise or change our own opinions or the dates on this matter if there is fresh evidence that comes to light. So the focus should be, in fact, to increase the amount of investment made in archaeology. In particular, there is a lot of discoveries yet to be made, waiting to be made. The government and has not done enough in bringing out, doing more for bringing out these archaeological findings. Only now, little by little, it is picking up. So in the future, I think we will have more and more evidence coming up, which might help us to settle these debates. But as of now, I think it would still remain a very complex issue to date them further.
we can have this debate privately because there's not enough time. But this particular portion, there should have been a linkage to the past, even if it is 4 pages of prologue. just like we have, because this is disconnected. If you are talking about society is a continuously evolving the cultural aspects and their economic aspects. So this is the start is disjointed. Like, it is, I don't know, you are pro this book or you are evaluating this book, but
So to answer the question, I think somebody else, Vikram Singh ji, has also answered as to who is the research team. So these details are available in the public domain. As I said, this curricular area group for social sciences, which has been created, consists of a large team of history experts headed by the scholar called Michel Danino, right, who's been awarded a Padma Shri, in fact, recently, who's a well-known scholar on Indian history. Right, so he has been the main leader of this team, the social science team. So most of the textbooks which have come out under his supervision, with the help of many historical experts, including Dr. Meenakshi Jain and others who are part of that social science.
we know the name. I mean, I'm
Michel Danim.
what's the
So there
name?
is a notification that has been put out. Later on, maybe I'll share it with Lakshmi Prasad ji. You will see the list of all the historians who are involved in that team, right? So when this CAG was formed somewhere around October 2023, the notification was issued. It is available on the NCERT's website. It has been widely covered in the newspapers also. All the names of those committee members are there in the public domain. It is not a secret. Right? So in fact, in the textbook itself, you will see at the beginning, if you go to the textbook in the beginning part of the acknowledgements before the table of contents, the whole team's name, the list of contributors is mentioned there after, I think, the foreword. I'll just tell you the page number. Let me see if I can show it on screen for you, just for your satisfaction. It is there on page 14 in the PDF. The NSTC committee's details are there. The supervising committee's details are there. And then the textbook development team. So the textbook development team is on page 16 in the PDF. So let me see if I can just wait for you so that it will be easier for you to locate it when you go to the textbook. So the entire team is there. It is very clearly mentioned. Textbook.
Yeah, maybe you can share a link which I can share
Yeah,
with
I'll
the
share the link with you.
It helps. Yeah. I mean, since we are talking about dating of epics, I think the traditionalist point of view should also be taken, and I'm not sure if the textbook authorities are conducive to that. 70 years ago, Kota Venkatachalam has put out a seminal work on dating of Mahabharata and how it's been distorted in the current discourse. I think those things should also be put out as a counterpoint of view to the Western Indological methods. If we have any other questions, we can take.
There is still time going on this work on the dating of the Vedas and Ramayana and Mahabharata. The name of the person who started this scientific research in the Vedic era and all that is Saroj Bala. She was Indian Revenue Service person. And then there is another gentleman, I think he passed away, Bhatnagar. But anyway, the subject of the eighth grade is not, I just gave example, that the scholars, when they don't agree on one particular point, they dismantle and dismiss actually the whole narrative, which may be, worth reading and commenting. A book written for eighth grade and 10th to 10th grade is being quoted by the PhD scholars and not read by the parents or the students. So that is what my complaint is. But there are several others. In any way, this is probably a good attempt. And if Dr. Pramod ji will tell me something about the yellow part that you highlighted, what is that is your emphasis thrust?
Yeah, I have highlighted it for the sake of this presentation. I just wanted to show some of those parts which have been widely debated in the media, etc. So I have highlighted.
This is media has appreciated or what?
No, there has been a lot of dispute in the media, as I said, particularly about the parts on Babar Akbar and Aurangzeb. That the leftist scholars claim that this is inaccurate, or that this is a communally motivated kind of depiction of these characters, etc. So I have just shown some of the sources which justify whatever the textbook meant.
So this is in part a response to the debate that's going on in the mainstream media. Arnabji, you have a question?
Right. No, more than a question, it's more of a comment saying that this is a wonderfully presented what you did this class 8, and anyone should look at the old class 8 textbooks. In fact, even the class 6 and 7 textbooks have been changed, so this is a continuation, to see the amount of changes that is required. And personally, there are some places where I would have wanted more changes. But I mean, I can understand that already there have been so many changes made. So my, not so much of a question, but more of a comment to Pramod is that are there parts of this book that still are problematic, in the sense of there is no primary reference cited, or the old textbook, whatever thing continues, etc. Because I mean, the old textbook is full of
No,
completely
as
full
far
of
as
lies.
the
So
references sources are concerned, Arnabji, see,
Mhm.
there is a teacher's manual, a teacher's textbook that will be created as a supplement to the textbook which is given to the students. So the
Mhm.
primary sources and the evidences are provided to the teacher, so that if there is a discussion in the class and some of the students want to go deeper to study these primary sources, etc., in the teacher's manual, these evidences are provided. Because if you include all this in the main textbook itself, as I said, it becomes very bulky.
No, true. Yeah. No, that's actually a very, very good way of doing things. So so all the research is actually documented, and
yes,
will
very
be
much.
made available in public. Fantastic.
Definitely.
Oh, I just wanted to congratulate you once more. It's a wonderful presentation. Enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
See, even now the NCERT takes feedback from the public also. There are a lot of people writing to them. You would have seen that the NCERT is in fact set up a panel now because there was one particular error in the map of the Maratha Empire that was raised by one of the Rajas, Jaisalmer, etc. So they are very open to criticism also. It is nobody's claim that these textbooks are perfect. So, given the kind of time pressure under which these textbooks are being produced, it is very humanly possible that there will be some errors in it also. And they're open to criticism, they're open to feedback from the public. We can all write to the NCERT, giving our feedback to them. And some of the valid feedback will be incorporated into the future revisions of the textbook that will be done in the coming years. So, this year, now, if the textbook is printed, if there are errors there, it will be revised. And next academic year, when the new revision comes out, it will get corrected. So I would very much encourage you, whatever feedback you have, whatever you shared with us now, please write to the NCERT, with supporting evidence or whatever, to impress upon them your feedback.
There's a remark by Supal Paulji from Bangladesh that there's no mention of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj in their country. We are dealing with one government here. Dealing with two would be too much, but yeah, that's a valid concern. Any further questions, remarks you'd like to put across to Pramod ji?
So that's it from me now, Lakshmi Prasad. I hope that I've given an overview of the textbooks, and I hope that this will encourage some of our viewers to go and see the previous textbooks also. And I feel that all of us should, where it is necessary, we should voice our appreciation for these new textbooks. And wherever necessary, we should also give our critical feedback. So to ensure that the history that is taught in our schools, truly reflects, the Bharata of our forefathers' dreams.
Is there any mention of Sikh history rather than saying, because they claim they conquered right up to Peshawar and Afghanistan? Is there a mention of a Sikh resistance to Mughal Empire?
There is in this, in fact, I had shown you on the screen that there is a brief mention of the Sikh resistance, particularly Guru Gobind Singh, Tegh Bahadur, and the atrocities committed on them have been highlighted. but I'm not very sure of the point that you are raising about their expansion up to Peshawar, etc. I'll have to look it up.
The point is, the Sikh Empire, is it mentioned as a Sikh Empire? Rather Ranjit Singh or other small kingdoms of that area, because that is Punjab was the most devastated province.
So here, because they are dealing particularly with the the Mughal rule and the atrocities that were committed on the Sikhs, so that resistance part has been highlighted, but I don't think there is a separate chapter or a very elaborate mention of the Sikh Empire as such. But anyway, I'll look it up again. The part on the Sikhs, I'll look it up and I'll share it with Lakshmi ji if I find a relevant reference there.
I can share
All right.
private conversation, because I did some research on that. Okay, thank you very much. It was quite an eye-opening presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pramodji. It was a really enlightening presentation, and some of us have left school long ago, and so it's a opportunity for us to actually look back and what's being taught in the schools today. Thanks very much for that. Thanks everyone for joining, and have a very good evening.
Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste.
Bye.
Namaste. Namaste.